Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Megan Winch, and I'm one of the Recruitment and Admissions Advisors here at the Side Business School in Oxford. Thank you for joining us for the second part of our virtual Oxford MBA Open Day event. For this afternoon's Q&A session, I will be joined by some of my colleagues in the Recruitment Admissions team, Charlotte Kelshakert, one of our senior advisors, and also Corinne Young and Hannah Griffiths, two of our Recruitment and Admissions managers. They're here this afternoon to answer all of your admissions related questions, so please do submit these via the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will do our best to get through as many as possible over the next hour. So let's jump straight in with our first question, which is, what is a college and how do I choose one?
Right, I'll take that one. Thanks very much, Megan. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our Q&A session this afternoon. Anything goes. You can ask us anything about the application process for the Oxford MBA or the MBA 1+1, whichever program you're interested in. It might be about admissions requirements or the whole process end to end. We'd be delighted to help out. But the question about colleges is a particularly Oxford question. It's one of the peculiarities of this institution, and to my mind, and I'm sure you agree, Corinne, it's something that makes Oxford different and really special. So in order to be a graduate student at Oxford, as well as being admitted by an academic department, such as Side Business School, you also have to become a member of one of the colleges. So there are 38 colleges at Oxford at the moment until Reuben College opens next year. And the college provides you with a second community, if you like, to be a member of during your time of study. And what that means for you is that whereas your MBA family are going to have quite a bit in common with you, yes, might have slightly different professional backgrounds, might have taken a slightly different path to doing the MBA, have different professional experiences to date, but one thing you all have in common is that you're studying for the MBA together. However, when you think about your college community, this is much, much more diverse. This is where you will rub shoulders with students who are studying all of the other disciplines offered at Oxford. Some of them might be undergraduate students, therefore much younger and more inexperienced than you, and others might be conducting doctoral research or be postdoctoral researchers and faculty members teaching subjects right across the university, everything from archaeology to zoology and everything in between. And from my perspective, that's where a lot of the magic can happen. You never know who you're going to bump into in your college, maybe in the middle common room that you'll be a member of as a graduate student, or maybe over dinner at a formal hall, and you'll get chatting to someone opposite you or beside you. And on the face of it, you might think you don't have much in common and you don't have much to learn from each other. But often this is a mistake, and there's actually an awful lot that you can teach each other, and you have these really rich and wide-ranging, fascinating conversations with people you meet who are also members of your college, and they will remain contacts and friends and members of your network for life. So if you think of the college as a complementary community that exists alongside the business school, it really offers you just a second network to tap into for life that is, as I say, academically speaking, much more diverse. Now, all MBA students have to be a member of a college, and it really doesn't matter which college you're a member of, because as a graduate student, unlike an undergraduate student, you're not taught in your college. Okay, all of your academic life unfolds at the school. So all of your teaching takes place in the school building, and you can see that on the slide here, this lovely hypermodern business school. You're not taught in college, therefore you're not making an academic judgment about your college or applying to one that's perhaps renowned or has strength in a particular subject, like you might if you were coming to Oxford as an undergraduate student, because undergrads are frequently taught in college. So it makes a difference for them, but it really doesn't make a difference for you. So what you might like to do when you're thinking about college membership is, do I want to be surrounded by only graduate students? Or am I attracted by a college that is perhaps a little bit more mixed in terms of demographic profile, Would I like to be a member of a college that also admits undergraduate students, for example? Would you find being surrounded by 18 and 19-year-olds really energizing? Or perhaps you'd like the more mature profile of a graduate-only college. But in terms of which college you choose, I would say don't worry about the minutiae of making that decision. You can even take the decision out of your own hands and tell us that you have no preference. Across the university, for graduate students, the vast majority have no preference of college and are quite happy to just join whichever community wishes to accept them as a member. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what an Oxford college is and how you might decide which one you would like to apply to for membership. So we're going to have a look now at some of the other questions that have come in while I've been waxing lyrical about colleges, and we'll see what questions we can turn to. We're going to choose the questions to answer live that have a really broad appeal and that are really common questions that we're asked a lot. And you'll find that questions that are very personal or perhaps more niche are going to receive a written reply from Hannah and Megan, working hard behind the scenes.
Great. Well, I'll kick off while you have a chance to read some of those questions, Charlotte. So thank you. There's lots of great questions coming through, so do keep those coming through. We've got a few questions around deadlines and some questions around entry requirements. So I thought I'd bundle them into one answer. So in terms of deadlines, so we have closed admissions for this September's cohort now, and we're finalising the group. In terms of the 2021 cohort, so next September, we are opening admission on the 1st of August. So there's only a couple of weeks to wait if you're looking to start an application for 2021. We have 4-stage deadlines within our recruitment cycle. So our first one will end in September. To be precise, the 11th of September is the first deadline. So if you are looking to apply early, then please do work on your application during August and the start of September. The other 3 deadlines will fall in October, January, and April. If you are looking for scholarship support or funding, there are different deadlines associated with different scholarships. The majority of our scholarships tend to be awarded at stage 3, which falls around January, but we would ask you to look into the specific scholarship requirements and also the deadlines, which are all detailed on our website before you apply. Some require an additional essay question to be answered. Some you will be automatically considered for if you do tick the scholarship required function on your application. In terms of the wider application, so we do look at applications holistically, meaning that we consider everything from your work experience, your academics, so a GMAT or GRE would be considered, and there is no preference with either of those, so whichever suits you best, please do complete that. We look at your undergrad degree result as well. We also look at what you want to do. So what is your goal? What are your passions? And what have you done so far to know that they're achievable for you? So you may not have a set goal in mind, but we do like to make sure that you have an idea of where you want to go. If you have a set goal, that's absolutely fantastic, but we do have great support at the school through our Careers Development Centre, who can help you with securing a role and working towards that as well. In terms of the application itself, so I mentioned a GMAT or GRE, so we do look at competitive scores for this. Our median GMAT is a 690, but there is a broad range, and as I said, we do look at applications holistically, so everything will be taken into consideration with that. With the GRE, we do look at either 160 for the quant and 160 for the verbal, which are considered competitive scores. So do aim for somewhere around that. But if you would like to discuss your full profile, then do get in touch with the team and we can best advise. In terms of the rest of the application process, so apart from the usuals with the transcripts, your work experience, etc., as you would expect to submit, there is the option to do a supporting statement, which is a 250-word essay. This is where you can help sell yourself to the committee and help yourself stand out from the crowd. So is there something you're really passionate about? Is there a personal experience you've had that has helped shape you into who you are today? something that is different, isn't elsewhere reflected in your application. So do think about that before you apply. Some people do also like to address any lower academic scores that they have received, whether there are specific reasons as to why they are lower than expected, and then not as to your nature of how you perform usually. So this is up to you how you answer that question. There is also an online video assessment. So this helps bring your application to life and helps us with seeing how you react to timed questions, how you think on your feet, and how you bring in your real life examples to answer some of these questions. So you'll be faced with some motivational questions and some random competency-based questions. So how you've dealt with situations in your professional working career so far. And there's also the chance for a written question. These can be random and abstract, so it's really to understand how you frame your point and your argument for the question that's posed. So I think there's some key features about the application process which I thought would be important to highlight today. Charlotte, is there anything else you'd like to add on to that?
Well, we've got quite a few questions coming in about different aspects of the application, so I'm sure we'll probably get into a bit more meat around some of those areas that people tend to be worried about. I know that there's some questions in the inbox there about things like English proficiency tests and so on, which we'll speak to in a moment. Okay, so if I take the next question that's come in here, which is about the summer. What options are available for the summer? Thanks for asking the question, Crystal. So there are really three things that you can choose between when it comes to filling the summer term. The first is to take an internship, if that's something that you would like to do. Perhaps try a particular company on for size, as it were, or have a go at working in a new sector for 6 weeks or thereabouts. Any internships are written up for credit, so we do need to be confident that the opportunity that's being offered to you has real relevance to the MBA curriculum and really gives you a chance to put some of the theories and frameworks that we've been teaching you into practice. So the way that an internship would work is that you would almost make a pitch, if you like, to the program team at the school to tell us about the opportunity that you've lined up for yourself, and we will then hopefully give you our blessing to go off for 6 weeks or so, have a really useful experience, put all of that learning into practice and write it up for credit. So that's one thing that you could choose to do over the summer. The second option that's available to you would be to join a strategic consulting project. Now, this is much more of a team-based activity, whereas an internship is something you'd be doing on your own. But the strategic consulting project is where a small group of students will be taken on board by a real company and put to work in the real world, solving a real challenge. And it could be anything from helping a small organization, maybe a startup or something like this, write a strategy document. Or it could be at the other end of the scale, it might be joining an office of a major multinational corporation, perhaps helping them work on a marketing plan for a new product or something like this. So a really wide range of opportunities are available. So if it's something team-based that you would like to have a go at and have a taste of real world work, really making a genuine difference to an actual going concern, as it were, then the strategic consulting project could be for you. But the third option for the summer, and the most popular amongst our students, is to take additional electives. You can take another 2 electives, I believe, over the summer term, and that really gives you the opportunity to study a little bit more than you have to date, because there's always a fantastic range of electives that are available to you, and often it's quite hard to be quite ruthless and choose the number that you're permitted to study as part of the program. And so the opportunity to bolt another 2 on during the summer is something that a lot of students cannot resist the temptation to do. So those are, in short, the 3 opportunities that you have to choose from during that summer term. Over to you, Corinne.
Thank you, Charlotte. So there's a question around references here, so I thought I'd highlight that, which is adding on to the application process, which I spoke about earlier. So in terms of this specific question, and I'll build on this, so Nikita's asked how to gain 2 reference letters while students are quarantined. So with references, you would nominate your referees online. So we usually ask for 2 of these. They can be academic or professional. They don't have to be both of the same. Basically, we would ask you to choose referees who know you best, who can speak about your strengths and your values, and that will help support your MBA application. We usually ask you to have a conversation with them in advance as well, so that you know they know what's expected during the process, and they know which areas to highlight for you. But also it's also helpful to know which of your development areas you have. So how can the MBA help support you on this journey? But also would advise that you are someone that has a business email address. So we don't typically accept references from Gmail accounts. So do ask someone that you have worked with or that you've studied under to do this for you. But as I said, it is uploaded electronically, so they can do so online. So there is no need to get a hard copy letter and to post this to us. So I hope that helps with the quarantined question and has provided some more information around the references there.
Thanks, Corinne. Yeah, that's a really good point. The application process is entirely online. No paper has to wing its way around the world. So the C19 impact, if you think of postal systems and getting hold of physical transcripts and what have you, it is not a problem because everything is soft copy. And building on Corinne's guidance around the application requirements, there's a question here about English proficiency tests. Can I start my application without an IELTS or a TOEFL score? So those are the 2 tests of English proficiency that we accept. We also accept the Cambridge test of English proficiency, but to be honest, no one really seems to take that. By far, the biggest and most widely accepted tests are IELTS and TOEFL. And to give you a bit of guidance around this, if you have not completed a degree that is taught and examined entirely in English, then you will have to submit the results of an English proficiency test that you've taken within the 2 years prior to making your application to the Oxford MBA. So to just flip that around, if you have completed an undergraduate degree or a master's degree or a PhD that was taught entirely in English, I'm not talking about a year abroad or a semester abroad, I'm talking about the entire degree. If that was taught and examined in English, then you don't have to take an English test. Okay, there'll be a part in the application form where it asks you that question. You can say, yes, I did my Bachelor of Arts at this university at this time. It was taught completely in English, and then you will be asked to upload evidence. So clearly, if you did your degree, let's say in America, then it's very obvious it was taught in English. Sometimes it might be that you were taught in a country where it's not obvious that it was taught in English. You might have done your degree in India, let's say, or Singapore or Hong Kong, where a lot of institutions do teach in English. So to provide us with evidence that that was the case, we ask you to upload either a letter from your university that confirms the language of instruction. That's something that's super common. They will just send you electronically a letter that confirms that, so really easy to get hold of from your institution. Or alternatively, quite a lot of the time, it states it on your transcript. It actually has typed on their medium of instruction, English. So that would be your evidence to upload to your application, and that's your way round having to take an English test. If you are listening to us this afternoon and you think, well, now my degree was not taught entirely in English, and I don't come from one of the majority English-speaking countries as defined by the UK Home Office. So what do I have to do? Well, you do need to take an English test. If you've taken one within the last 2 years before submitting your application, that's great. If not, you need to take a test. It needs to be an IELTS or a TOEFL, and there are minimum scores that you must achieve before applying. Rather than go down into the deep detail now, I'd suggest you have a look at our website where we break down the overall score plus the component scores in speaking, reading, writing and listening that you need to achieve in order to meet the University of Oxford's standards. For those of you who might be worried about test centre closure during C19, both TOEFL and IELTS are available as an online test as well as in person. A lot of the in-person centres are now reopening. So we will accept either the online test or the results for tests that you've taken in person. Hope that helps.
There's a couple of questions around work experience here, so I thought I'd just build on that point. So a couple of the questions have asked if you have over 10 years experience, is it best to do the MBA or the executive MBA? So it's completely up to you in a way. So 10 to 12 years is usually our top kind of admissions that we see typically for the MBA. However, we do advise you to get in touch with us to have a conversation, because we would like to explore your reasons for wanting to do the MBA and what your goals are, and also why it's important for you to complete it now. So there is an email address on the slide here in front of us. So I would encourage you to send your profile to us and reach out to the team, and we can get in touch and have a further phone call. But building on how many years experience, so our minimum is typically 2 years full-time working experience. And we don't consider internships or part-time voluntary work within that 2 years. So it would be a full-time role that you would have held. And then that can go up, as I mentioned, 10 to 12, even sometimes to 15 years we have seen, but it is based on individual circumstances and what your goals are as well. So we would consider all of that holistically with your application. The average years of work experience is 5 years on the Oxford MBA within the current class. So I hope that helps answer your question there, but do reach out for a conversation, because it may be helpful for us to get a greater understanding into your whole profile and what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve through the MBA. And then if we felt the executive MBA after our conversation would be more suited, we can always connect you with our colleagues in that department as well, whilst you're looking to explore both programs.
Got a question here from Nitesh. Hi Nitesh, thanks for your question. And this is about post-MBA plans. So there's a section in the application form that Corinne has already talked about, which is where you set out for us your next step after graduating from the Oxford MBA. Where's it taking you? What's the purpose? Thinking of your professional development. And Nitesh is asking the question, well, how much detail do we need to go into to complete this part of the application form? And my guidance is that you should remember that the program we're offering at Oxford, it's only a one-year program. So if you are looking to make a change in your career, perhaps you're looking to pivot from one sector to another, or perhaps you're looking to change function but stay within the same sector, or maybe you're looking to just accelerate in your current career path and just move ahead but staying on pretty much the same trajectory, you need to try and give us quite a bit of insight into how realistic and achievable this proposition is. So I would say there is no word count when it comes to completing this part of the form. But if you have a look at the questions, there are quite a few, and we've designed this part of the application form to be deliberately reflective. And in answering the questions, we want you to go on a bit of a personal audit, a little bit of a journey deep within yourself, and start to think about what it is you want to do professionally after you finish the MBA. And is it something that is achievable and realistic? It might well be stretching. You might be looking to break into quite a competitive marketplace, but knowing yourself the way you do and thinking about what an MBA is offering you in terms of development, does this all stack up? And in answering those questions, I'd encourage you to paint a fairly full picture for us. Tell us about what you want to do, where you want to do it, who your ideal employers might be, what kind of role it is, who do you know in your network that's already made a similar move, what kind of advice have they given you? thinking about your target employers, what do you know about their hiring practices and preferences? What do they look for in their new hires? And how do you measure up against those criteria? So the form really gets you to start to unfold the answers to some of these questions, which, as I say, in a one-year program, you really need to know yourself pretty well before you arrive so that we can start working with you and our careers team can start working with you from the get-go, rather than coming to do the MBA and then thinking, why am I here? What do I want to do next? And in a very, very fast-paced program, your career search, it needs to really run in tandem. So the more thought that you can give to your objective before you even apply, the better. It really helps you hit the ground running if you're admitted to the program. So I would say there's no word count, but do think about being fairly thorough and fairly detailed in your response to these questions. And the final question in that section of the application, as you would probably expect, is, well, if that doesn't work out, what's your plan B? You always need to have a thought in the back of your mind, like your insurance option. If that doesn't work out, that's what I really want, but I know I've got a whole bunch of skills, so actually I could turn my skills to this as an alternative scenario. Hope that helps.
Great. And there's a question around the 1+1 here and specific to deadlines, but I thought I'd just provide a little bit of information around the 1+1 for those of you that are looking to complete this. So this is a unique 2-year offering to combine one of our partnering master's programs within the University of Oxford with the MBA. You would complete the master's program within your first year of study, followed by the Oxford MBA in your second year. So it's a unique offering to really tailor your experience more. You would need to submit 2 different applications. So you would need to meet the admissions criteria for both your master's, your MSc, but also the MBA as well. So what we would advise, there is information on our website detailing which partnering programs we have. So there's quite a few amongst the different departments of the university. So do have a look at the website for the partnering programs and look at the admissions criteria for that, because they will likely be a little bit different to what the MBA requires. There will be a specific deadline for your masters, but this will be individual for whichever masters you decide to select. So again, do look at the website for those deadlines. If you are looking to apply for the 1+1, however, for the MBA, we would advise that you apply by stage 3, which is our January deadline. So I hope that helps slightly with your time frame there. And then you may get offered one or the other. So there is a small chance that your application would be approved for either your MSc or your MBA. So you may decide to take them singularly. So you can do your master's on its own and you can do your MBA on its own. So that there would be a decision for you to continue to make after that point. But hopefully you'd get accepted to both if you meet both of the admissions requirements. And again, please do reach out to the team if you have any more specific questions based on your individual circumstances around the 1+1, and we'll be happy to help you in more detail.
Great, thanks. A couple of questions here about work experience that I'd just like to speak to, and one about slight underperformance in one aspect of someone's profile. Someone asking here, can I just apply straight to the MBA after completing my undergraduate degree? I think it's really important to reflect upon the fact that an MBA is not like a normal graduate master's program at all. Yes, it's academic to a degree, but it's also highly vocational. And what we need is for students to come and do the program when they've got enough real world, real life work experience under their belt, that the academic aspects of the program, so the theories and frameworks that we discuss with you while you're in class, can be very easily applied to your experience to date, and that you can really visualize a time in your own professional past where you could have applied that theory or that framework or that learning to a real scenario, or alternatively, how you might apply it in your place of work. In other words, You need to come and do an MBA when you've got a story to tell, when you've got lots of experience under your belt, so that the teaching is grounded in reality and that you can share your experience with your fellow students. I think it's really important also to note that when you come and do an MBA, you're not just learning from our faculty, brilliant as they are, you're actually learning from each other a lot. In fact, some of the richest learnings, I think, can come from just discussing with your peers and other students how you have handled similar situations in the past, and you just learn from each other's ways, methods, experiences, successes, failures, and you really help each other to develop in that way. So that's why we look for work experience, at least 2 years full-time work experience. Probably a bit more. As Corinne has already said, most of our students think about doing an MBA once they're sort of 5 or 6 years into their career after leaving university. So I would encourage you to get a few years of work experience under your belt and then think about an MBA as part of your ongoing professional development when the time is right. And another very quick question, if I may, Corinne, before I turn back to you. We have a question here about how would I make up for poor performance in my undergraduate degree? So while we're thinking about undergraduate life, fair to say that for a lot of you, being an undergraduate was quite a long time ago. That was then, this is now. You can't get in a time machine, unfortunately. So there's nothing you can do about your GPA or your degree classification. So you need to ask yourself, well, what can I do? What is still within my gift and my control to take action on right now to really elevate my profile? And one way you can do that to really, I think, demonstrate your current capability in a much more rounded fashion than your degree, frankly, is to really ace your GRE or GMAT. Because unlike an undergraduate degree that has a real singularity of focus, your GMAT or your GRE is a much, much more up-to-date test of your rounded capability. So the test will address your ability to reason and to synthesize information and to make arguments, as well as your verbal and your quantitative ability. So your GMAT or GRE, I think, gives us a very up-to-date window on what you're really capable of right now. Whereas your undergraduate degree, it showed us what you were capable of with regards to that individual subject X years ago. So my top tip is, if your undergraduate degree is a little bit weaker than ideal, think about your GMAT and your GRE performance. Does that really showcase your ability to us? Do your mock tests, take a test. Are you happy with the result? If not, retake. You often see uplift between your first and second, and maybe even second and third attempt. You get to understand how the questions are structured, what the examiners are really looking for, and you often relax into the process more after your first test attempt. So I think that's something that really is within your control to get better at and to show us what you're really capable of.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. So I'm going to take 2 questions because one is very quick here. So the first one is from Horace: is the admissions process different for international students than domestic students? So the answer simply is no. The application is simply the same for absolutely everybody that applies, so that everybody has a fair chance to be reviewed on the same criteria as everyone else. So there is no difference in the application process depending on where you come from. So it is exactly the same. And then a question from Glenn here is around if you don't have any certified achievements or certifications, then how can you boost your application? Which is a great question. So there are a number of different areas that I would advise personally here. So when reviewing applications, some things that can stand out is international exposure. So think about your career so far. Have you had the opportunity to work abroad? Have you had the opportunity to work on complex projects with international clients? And again, building on that client work, have you worked with international clients or a mixture of clients from different industries that have provided you with more depth into different people's backgrounds and provided you with more cultural awareness, because that will really help you on the Oxford MBA, because it is incredibly diverse. So understanding if you've had that international exposure through, as I mentioned, project, client work, or even traveling and living in different countries and cities will really help to boost your application there. Also the progression within your career so far. So talk about your increased responsibilities that you've had so far, any promotions that you've gained, any terrific feedback you've received on projects, and also any achievements within your professional career so far. So maybe you've been nominated for something. So talk about some of those achievements so far in your career. Another area also to think about is not only what you've done within your career so far, but also what have you done outside of work that has helped shape you into who you are today. So you may have done voluntary work, you may have worked within the community, so talk about that within your supporting statement perhaps, but also highlight that on your CV and resume to make that stand out, because that will also make you stand out from the crowd in some circumstances. So I hope that's provided you with just some flavour of other things that we look for. So you don't technically have to have any certifications as such, apart from the academic side, which we've spoken about with the degree and also the GMAT or GRE. So there's some ways which you can help boost your profile in other ways there.
Right, we've had two people ask pretty much the same question, one after the other. So Raj and Sheila, great minds definitely thinking alike, both asking questions about the selection process from the school's perspective, particularly around interviewing. So when you make your application, if it is complete when the deadline falls, and we need everything to be in place, so your references need to be in, and all of your transcripts need to be uploaded, your GMAT result in, your English result in, whatever it might be, every aspect of the application form needs to be there when the deadline passes. And we gather together all of the applications that have reached that status of being complete. And the admissions committee will meet, and at least 2 people, if not more, will read your entire application. Every single document, will scrutinize every single mark on your transcripts, will watch your video submissions, will really take a very detailed view of your application, and will make a recommendation should we interview this person and find out more about them or not. But in short, we then arrive at a shortlist of interview candidates. We do not make any direct offers to the MBA at Oxford. So it's not possible to make an application and receive an offer of admission without being interviewed. Okay, so that means after the deadline's fallen and after we've assessed the applications, we will either invite you to take part in an interview or tell you that your application is at an end. For those of you that are called forward for interview, before C19, we would normally invite you to come to Oxford to have your interview in person, or we might have had a member of the committee in a city near you, in which case we might have lined up the opportunity to have a face-to-face interview overseas. But because our cohort is so international, sort of 95% international, clearly we can't be in every city, and clearly not every candidate could have the time or indeed the funds to just jump on a plane or a train and come to Oxford. So we have always interviewed via Zoom or Skype, and this remains the case. So in terms of interviewing at the moment, everything is digital, as you would expect, and for us that hasn't really changed anything. Pretty much business as usual, because as I say, with a program that is this international, we have always interviewed virtually. So in your interview, it's a one-on-one conversation with a member of the admissions committee, and you should be prepared to have questions asked on any aspect of your application. So you need to know yourself really well. You need to understand your backstory, your motivation. We will potentially revisit questions that you were asked in your video submissions, where you're given very, very limited time to answer against the clock. So we might give you a little bit more time to explore the answers to those questions in a bit more detail. We might interrogate you a little bit more about your post-MBA plans and really test the achievable aspect of those goals and aims, really test whether it's a realistic transition that you're looking to effect. And we might get you to reflect upon the applications you're making to other schools and maybe the differences between the respective programs, or we might throw you a few curveballs as well, just to get to know you better as an individual. The interviews are not technical, they are very much a conversation, and we're not looking to trip you up, but it is really an opportunity for us to just get to know you a little bit better and meet the person behind the application. And all of the candidates that we make offers to have been interviewed.
Fantastic. So there's a question from Camilo around the GMAT. So they've mentioned it's difficult to take it now. So can you apply without a GMAT? So the answer here is that you can start your application before you have completed your GMAT, as long as you've got that booked in before the deadline. So we would require your GMAT or GRE score whilst we review applications for the interview process. So look at the deadlines, as we mentioned on our website, the first being 11th of September for next September's cohort. So do look at our deadlines and have a plan in mind for you to work towards your GMAT or GRE and then apply in good time, but give yourself enough time to prep for that. I know a lot of global test centres have been offering online courses and tests as well for GRE or GMAT. So if that is an option for you and you're comfortable with that online format, then we would encourage you to do that as well. So there isn't any preference for us, whether it's the online or in person, but you may find there is a preference personally. So do complete it how you feel comfortable doing so. But in short, we would require it by the deadline, but do dip in and out of your application once they open from the 1st of August and build up your profile as you go ahead of the deadline.
Got a few questions here about essays, both scholarship essays and those that support the application. And I know that Corinne has already spoken about these in some detail at the beginning of the webinar, but just in case some of you perhaps tuned in a little bit later and missed the first answer, I'll just recap the different types of essays that you might be required to submit as part of your application. So the first one is this 250-word essay, which is around what else would you like the admissions committee to know about you that isn't covered elsewhere in your application. You can use this as you see fit. There is no right or wrong answer. What I would say is, if you say not applicable, I've covered everything else in my application, I would say that's a missed opportunity. So I would encourage you to say something in this essay. You might want to tell us more about what you do when you're not at work, for example, maybe something that you do in a voluntary or sporting or social capacity that you just think tells us a little bit more about what makes you you, and might be interesting for us to know about you. So that's one thing that you could think about. It could be that there's an aspect of your profile that you know is a little weaker than ideal. So you might want to confront that head on and really demonstrate a bit of self-awareness for the committee. Show us that you know that that's a weakness and tell us about the steps that you've taken to remedy that. You can really use that to tell us anything at all that you would like us to know about you. But the other essays that you might need to answer, if you're applying to the 1+1, there is an additional essay that you need to write, which is really telling the admissions committee why the 1+1 is important to you rather than just doing an MBA. Why do you need a master's degree that affords you an academic deep dive into a very specialist area of academic study, followed by an MBA? So you can set out that piece of narrative for us in that essay. And the other place where you're going to potentially have to write an essay is around scholarships. Now, the first thing to mention, and I know Corinne has already mentioned scholarships, the vast majority of the hundreds of scholarships that we offer across the university at Oxford, they don't require an essay from you. You don't need to do anything on your application at all. If we admit you to the programme, then we will look at who you are, where you're from, what your background is, and for all of the scholarship competitions where you meet the eligibility criteria, you will automatically enter those scholarship competitions and be considered for funding. So you don't have to do anything more. There are a small handful of scholarships, however, where you do need to write a supporting essay. Now, this is made really clear in the funding section of the application form. There's literally sort of 3 or 4 that I can think of across the many hundreds of scholarship competitions that run. So in those essays, you will need to complete that essay, that challenge. Some of them are multiple questions and some of them will just be an essay title where you can just speak to that instruction and give us a little bit more insight into why that scholarship is absolutely right for you and what you're going to do as a result of attending the University of Oxford. So those are the written essays that you might encounter on your application journey. And as Corinne's already mentioned, there is of course your short video assessments that you need to undertake. You only get access to the video assessment platform once you've submitted your application. It's worth noting that. So if you're looking to hit a particular application deadline, I would say submit maybe a week before the deadline. That gives you plenty of time to hop onto the video assessment platform, get comfortable with the technology, have a practice, get used to seeing yourself, hearing yourself, and then when you're ready, you can do your live take against the clock for your randomized essay questions. They're really short, it's 1.5 minutes per question, but it really just gives us a snapshot into how you think on your feet. Over to you, Corinne.
Great, Charlotte, thank you. There's an interesting question here from Lara. So asking about opportunities for MBA students within the wider Oxford community. She specifically mentioned here engineering and computer science, but I know there may be a few of you that are interested in understanding how those connections work within the wider Oxford community. So there are a number of ways for you to grow your network outside of your MBA class, which makes you Oxford and the collegiate system we have so unique. So there is a lot to offer at Oxford. A lot of people do get fear of missing out because there's just too much that you may want to do at Oxford, but that also gives you diversity as well. So there's lots of different things going on. In terms of how you can get involved, so there are a number of structured ways we may help to build that network within the wider community, and there may be individual ways. So if that is something you're looking to do to build your network across Oxford, then that network is there for you to reach out to. But we can help add some structure with this through OBNs, which are our student networks, our student clubs also. So they usually partner with different departments around the university. They hold social events, they hold speaker talks. Sometimes these can be based around industries, or for example, we have alliances that focus on Africa and also women too. So it may be around specific areas of interest and what you're passionate about. But also through the co-curriculars, the electives, the labs that we have on offer, that will also build your network outside of that MBA group. So you'll meet people within that wider community at Oxford, but also outside of that community too. There's a lot of information on our website about some of these areas, but if you would like a further conversation to delve into these and your specific profile and what you're looking for, then we will happily have that conversation with you. So please do reach out to us. And to build on that as well, so you has asked a question around the finance lab. So typically this would be open to applicants once you have been offered a place at Oxford, but once you have also accepted your place by paying your deposit. So you will be connected to our Careers Development Centre, who support you for a 21-month period at Oxford. So that is also a unique offering. It's not just the 12 months you would be on programme. It would be from around June time before you start the programme in September, continuing to after graduation, typically until March. And with the Finance Lab, you would put in a separate application for this. Typically, the deadline for that is July, before the programme would start in September. But you will be communicated details of that should you be offered a place, and then should you accept your place on the programme. But if you want to discuss the Finance Lab in more detail, please again do reach out to us and we can go into more detail with you on the specifics of that.
Question here about making an application to the MBA 1+1, and just to make this really clear, if you do want to apply to the 1+1, you are in effect making 2 simultaneous applications to Oxford. So you're making an application to the MBA 1+1, which is to all intents and purposes exactly the same as making an MBA application in terms of the process and the materials that we require, the tests you need to have taken when you apply. So you still hit the same deadlines as if you are applying just to the MBA. Okay, so you do need to, for example, have taken your GMAT or GRE or English tests, if applicable, by the deadline. So you need to have completed your MBA application. As a separate endeavour, you need to make an application to the partnering MSc that you've chosen from the list of available partner programmes, and you need to make sure that that application is also complete by the deadline for that programme. It's worth mentioning here that the application systems are different, the deadlines are different, the entry requirements are very different often, and the assessment process is different. So therefore, on the MBA side, we've talked about all of the aspects of your application that builds up your profile, all the materials you need to supply, the fact that you're interviewed, and so on. For your partner program application, it could feel quite different. Not only the fact it's a different system and perhaps a different deadline, but the materials you're asked for. You'll be asked for, excuse me, 3 academic references, for example. You might be also asked for a couple of 2,000 word extracts from previous academic work that speaks to that specialisation, depending on the entry requirements from that particular degree. And a lot of other graduate programs across the university do not interview. So your application either succeeds or fails on the back of your academic application that you're submitting. But what I'm really trying to say here is that this is 2 applications you need to make around the same time. It doesn't literally have to be the same time, but within the same application cycle. And the objective is that the school will assess your MBA application, and then quite separately and independently, a similar admissions committee at the department of whatever it might be the Blavatnik School of Government, for example, it might be the Faculty of Law, it might be the Department of Computer Science, depending on which program you're applying to. An admissions committee in that academic department will be doing exactly the same task, reading your application, thinking about you, shall we make an offer or not? And as I've said, we interview candidates, other departments might or might not interview candidates, but you'll end up with 2 application outcomes. If they are both offers of admission, at that point, we then defer your entry to the MBA by a year. So you make your 2 applications up front in the same admissions cycle, you get your results. If both are positive outcomes, we then defer your entry to the MBA by a year. So to answer the specific question about the GMAT, you need to have that in place when you submit your application. Hope that clears that up for you.
Great. There's a question here from Dave around, is there alumni that we have or students that volunteer to have conversation with prospective students and applicants? And do we have any events coming up? So this is the second of our open day offerings at the moment in the virtual space. And because we are all operating in this virtual world at the moment, we have been providing a lot of sessions online, whether that's focusing around coming to Oxford with families and your partners and children, children. We've had webinars that focused on our alumni and their specific journeys as well. We've had more general application tips webinars as well. So there's a lot of recordings available which can be shared with you, and we can check with Megan at the end if that will be shared in the post webinar mailing today actually. But also we do have a number of events still coming up. So I would ask you to check our website. So if you look at the Side Business School website under events, you'll see some that are targeted towards the MBA, and we will have more coming up. So do check that regularly. If you are on our mailing list as well, then we will mail out to you when we have new events coming up for you to register for. So if you're not yet on our mailing list, you will be after this webinar today as well, or you can download a brochure to definitely ensure you are. But also with alumni and students to speak to. So if there is a specific student that you'd like to speak to that has been on a similar journey or pathway to you or transition, then we would encourage you to actually get in touch with us. So because there may be someone that we know of that would be ideal for you to speak to. But if you are looking for people on LinkedIn or more generally online, you may be able to find that perfect person for you. Our alumni are a great community, and our current students as well, and they're always willing to help. So please do reach out to them on LinkedIn or to the team here at Oxford, and we can help make that connection for you. So I hope that helps.
I'm going to take a couple of questions here about colleges, which I was twittering on about at the beginning of the webinar. For those of you that maybe missed, let's just revisit a couple of questions linked to college membership. Question here from Alexander about whether a student's college influences the scholarships that are available. Short answer, no. You'll automatically be considered for all of the pots of scholarship funding that exists right across the collegiate university once you've got an offer of admission to the MBA programme. You will find that occasionally there are scholarships that are college linked, and what that means is if you are chosen to become a particular scholar or to become the recipient of a particular scholarship funding, it might be the case that in order to receive the scholarship, you need to be a member of a particular college, in which case we'll let you know, you'll become a member of that college, you'll get the funding, everyone will be happy. But in short, you can be considered for scholarships quite irrespective of the college that you might have in mind as perhaps one that you'd like to apply to for membership. It really doesn't affect that at all. And another question here about colleges: is there any possibility that you get into the MBA but then you're rejected by your preferred college? Yep, there's every chance of that. Colleges decide who they want as members of their community, and each college pretty much looks at people through a different lens, which makes it quite hard to predict what the outcome of a college membership application might be. Some colleges are very interested in your academics, some colleges are just interested in everything about you, and some colleges it's really quite randomized as to who they admit as members. But suffice to say, each college decides how many MBAs it wants as a member. So therefore some colleges might only admit a couple of MBAs each year. Other colleges might be very happy to have a student body that includes 30 or 40 MBAs. If you go forward for consideration by a college and that college decides it doesn't want to offer you membership for whatever reason, then we will let you know, because the college will tell us. But at that point, we do not come back to you to say, okay, what's your second preference? What's your third preference? What's your fourth preference? At that point, you go into a completely randomized blind reallocation process. As I said at the top of the webinar, it really doesn't matter which college you're a member of in terms of your academic life, because you're not taught in college like an undergraduate student is. You're taught in the school. Your college is much more about your social or sporting or extracurricular community. It's almost just like that second network that you can get to know and hang out and relax with, and every college gives you that opportunity. So it could be that you don't receive an offer of admission from your preferred college, but never fear, we guarantee that you will be offered membership by an alternative college.
Great, and we've got a question here from Yadvendra, asking whether the 2 years working experience needs to be completed as you submit your application. So it is a good question. So if you are looking for the 2021 cohort and applying soon, then we would ask you to have at least 2 years working experience at time of application for us to be able to review your application. So this is a minimum requirement for us at Oxford. So we would encourage you to submit once you have at least got that 2 years working experience behind you. So do apply once you have reached that stage, but do reach out to us, as I've said before, if you've got any more questions around that, and we'd be happy to help you.
One question here, which is about previous experience, saying, do you have to have been a team manager or a team leader before applying to the MBA? And I think it's really important that we emphasize, no, you really don't have to. The student body at Oxford, it's really, really diverse. We admit students from lots of different professional backgrounds, everything from the creative and performing arts right through to those sort of classic MBA type careers, you know, investment banking or strategy consulting, and everything in between. You know, you might be finishing a commission with the military and getting your first civilian role after completing your MBA, for example. So everyone is at a different point on that leadership spectrum. Yep, some people that apply have led significant teams. I mean, someone who's been an officer in the army is clearly going to have lots of that kind of leadership experience, whereas others are very experienced at perhaps leading a project, so have no permanent line reports and don't really have management experience in that sense, but are experienced in pulling together diverse groups of people to deliver work on a project-oriented basis, whereas others, you might be experienced at managing budgets rather than people or resources. So everyone's at a different point on that spectrum. You don't have to be an experienced team leader or a previous manager to think about getting an MBA from Oxford.
Great. I'm conscious of time as we've gone over the hour. So Megan, are we still answering questions, or would that conclude today?
I think that will conclude today because we are at the end of the hour now. So that was brilliant. Thank you so much to both of you. And thank you to everyone for sending in so many great questions. I think we managed to cover quite a broad range of topics there. However, if we didn't get around to answering your questions today, then, or if you'd like further clarification or information, then please do send us an email. The email address is on the screen now. So it's the oxfordmba@sbs.ox.ac.uk address. Our inbox is monitored daily, so please do get in touch and one of the team will get back to you. Corinne, you mentioned earlier that the recordings from these sessions, so all these open day sessions have been recorded and will be shared via email after the event if you have been registered. They're also available on our Side Business School YouTube page, so please do check that out. We have our last session of the virtual open day at 3:30 today, which is a taster lecture with Steve New, who is our Associate Professor in Operations Management. So I hope you're all able to join us for that. Until then, have a lovely afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining.
Bye, and good luck.
Take care.